understood that the federal government is on an unsustainable fiscal path. Yet as a nation, we have done little to address this critical threat to our economy. Doing nothing will not be an option indefinitely.
We've got a box set of that if you want to hear the whole thing. Anyway, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke whining today about Congress not doing enough to cut spending, but he's printing money like it's going out of style. Hypocrite? To the Fox Biz All-Stars, Jonathan Hoenig, Lizzie McDonald, Leslie Marshall, and Gary B. Smith. Gary, what do you think?
Well, I totally think it's hypocritical. I would say that at the root of the subprime crisis, it was the Fed meddling with interest rates. You know, where is it that their mandate on top of all this is job creation, which is kind of what he's implying along with the fiscal? I just don't get it. I think that the Fed has done far more harm since its inception than good, and I think he needs to back off and kind of eat his own cooking at this point.
Liz?
You know, it's interesting you said it's on, you know, the U.S. is on an unsustainable path, and the Fed chairman's been saying that. The Fed chairman and the Fed has been helping the U.S. on this unsustainable deficit spending path by monetizing the debt and keeping yields low, so-called teaser rates on the bond yields low, because they've basically been helping to buy U.S. treasuries. And whether or not they continue to do so is a real serious issue for the markets, because when the Fed pulls out, watch out, there could be a bond market crack-up or a seizure.
Leslie?
Well, basically, I like when I'm not a big fan of his, I'm not a big fan of the Fed, and I'm not a big money gal, but I have to say, when you do something unconventional, and when right now all of his critics still have to look at the fact that interest is low, inflation is not ballooned, we have manufacturing is up, productivity is up, and we also have consumerism up. We know that we need at some point, and it will happen, that the unemployment rate will drop and drop at a quicker rate. And until it does, I think he's playing it safe because he feels this has worked thus far.
Jonathan?
Yeah, but you know, you put a lot of faith in the guy who missed the collapse in the first place, right, Neil? I mean, we're taking our sage advice for Ben Bernanke. Let's not forget that the Fed missed the collapse to begin with, and he is an advocate, as Gary B. accurately pointed out, of all the intervention, the quantitative easing, the devaluation, all the interventions. And I'm sorry, but the Fed believes, as many elected officials who he was preaching to believe, that government creates wealth. So we've had the auto bailouts, the housing bailouts, all the stimulus, which everyone admits has really not done anything for economic growth.
Gary B., I don't want to get too wonky here, but we know this Fed chairman is an expert on the Depression. And that his biggest criticism, and he's written theses on, is that what it is, theses?
Yes, it is.
He's written a lot of reports on the Depression, Gary B., and arguing that what regulators at the time could be blamed for, Washington is not doing enough, and that they should have been much more aggressive in the earliest stages. Yeah. And so maybe he was aggressive for that reason. And Leslie raises a good point. The proof so far seems to be in the pudding. You argue that's going to be short-lived, right?
I do. I mean, really what you're saying is he was an expert on the Depression in the 30s. He might not be an expert on whatever comes next, whether it's another depression or an extended recession or whatever. It goes back to Jonathan's point. We put too much faith in really smart guys like they're Wizard of Oz people behind the curtains, able to pull the exact lever at the exact right time. This is a guy that not only missed the subprime crisis, caused it, and then when we were going deeper and deeper, he said we'd be out of it by, I think, my gosh, spring of '09 or something like that. Missed it on all accounts.
He also said it wasn't, it was contained and it wouldn't spill over, contagion effect right in the middle of the bubble.
Well, he was not alone. Let's be fair.
He was not alone. And it's a whole issue, of course, about whether or not the Fed can identify and prick asset bubbles. Of course it can. Of course it can. It just doesn't want to. It doesn't want to be seen as wrecking the party for everybody.
What the asset bubble
certainly,
is.
Right. It certainly has been aiding and abetting asset bubbles, and now aiding and abetting the U.S. government in its deficit spending as well.
We're going to take a quick break here, pay our bills, because we don't want any debt bubbles here at FBN. That's my own little. Anyway, when in doubt, tax more. Here's where there isn't any doubt. It won't work. All right, it might seem a little weird for this alert here, but Illinois announcing today that it's looking to raise its state income tax 75%. That would take it from 3% all the way up to 5.25%. State thinks that they can tax their way out of the financial mess. Can they? Are we doomed if they try? To our man in Chicago, Jonathan, what do you think?
Yeah, 75%, Neil. This is it. 70. Can you see this, Neil?
Yes.
75%. You know,
Is it 75%?
It is
What was that number?
75%, Neil. Illinois is America's Portugal now, okay? I'm sorry. This is a cesspool here. We have the credit score of Libya, and this reflects it. Neil, think about if a health insurance CEO tried to raise premiums 75%. These same elected officials would howl. They would howl. But that's exactly the hole that we've dug ourselves into. And, of course, they're trying to balance it on the backs of the productive people, you know, the folks who actually work and take responsibility for themselves and provide for themselves. They're the ones paying for the price for all these
outrageous. But, Leslie,
outrageous
obviously the state's hard up right now. And we have seen the various states that have tried these tax hikes, particularly on the well-to-do, that they don't raise the amount of money thought. In New York, in fact, his son Andrew Cuomo has given up on the notion of a millionaire's tax and is going to let it phase out the end of this year. What do you make of all of this?
Well, first of all, you got to remember, even though this dollar amount is inflated from what he promised, this is what he campaigned on, guys. This is what the people of Illinois elected him to do.
No, he can't actually campaign on 1%. He promised no more than a 1% increase.
I just said that. It was an inflated, well, it wasn't 1%. Well, it is definitely more than double what he originally stated. I agree. But what I'm saying, I used to live in Illinois, I live in California now. The people of Illinois, if they want to pay more to get more and they think this is the way to do it, that's their choice and prerogative. I agree with Neil that it won't work.
All right. So now, Lizzie, we have to wonder if it doesn't work. And we know the history suggests that tax, especially in this kind of environment, aren't going to work. Then what do these states that are cash-strapped and out of money do?
You know, what do? They continue to try to borrow from the muni bond market. But, you know, to the point...
There's a limit to that.
Yeah, and they could get locked out.
Then you have to cut like crazy.
They could get locked out of the muni bond market. The dealers could say, look, nobody wants your bonds anymore. And that's certainly true of Illinois and California. They are in that desperate situation. But, Neil, no state, never mind, no country has ever taxed their way to prosperity if they could. You know, Sweden would be a superpower right now. And, you know, other countries in the world who tried it have shown time and again it doesn't work. And who's going to be left living in that state?
The Swedes, have you seen the Swedes? They will always be a superpower in my eye.
Well, the whole country has a head cold.
You're talking that way, the government.
The whole country has a head cold. So
I was thinking Swedish models, and you were looking. All right, so, Gary, I know we keep raising this issue, raise taxes, and you'd think in this environment with these experiences that we've had that that's not the way to go. But what if the president has some success nationally with keeping these Bush rates where they were, get some, you know, goose to the economy, but the payroll tax cut, and some of these other governors who have dispensed with their surtaxes on see some growth? Then does Illinois take the cue and go the other way?
Well, Illinois has the U.S. as a whole has one big advantage over Illinois. Most people are not going to pick up and move out of the United States to France or Sweden. But what they are doing in droves are moving out of the states that have the highest income taxes. There was 9 states last year that accounted for 35% of the country's population growth. You know which 9 those were? The ones with no income tax. And so what happens is people like Jonathan in Illinois, who's mobile, probably can do most of his business over the internet, will pick up and move to a Florida or a Texas or something. So the most productive parts of the society, or at least the high income earners, will move out of these states, and then there'll be an even worse crisis. Have to go hat in hand to the federal government for bailouts, and then, of course, we'll all pay anyway.
Are you moving, Jonathan?
Well, I could be eating steaks in Texas and getting a suntan in Florida. It sounds pretty good, more than paying higher taxes here in Illinois.
Wait, your brother moved?
My brother moved from New York State to North Carolina. He just couldn't take it anymore because of the tax situation.
He didn't want to be near you?
Well, that was a big factor, number one.
But he moved because of the high tax, like the Rush Limbaugh thing.
He ostensibly said, yes, the tax situation is killing me. It's killing my family. I'm out of here.
And we're North Carolina?
North Carolina. Lower taxes there.
Really? Is there Broadway?
No.
All right, guys. It just seems kind of sad to me. By the way, Jonathan, did taxes go up 75%? Is that what happened?
Well, Neil, that's actually what I happened to read in the paper this morning. It's a pretty shocking increase.
Thanks, guys. Listen, have a great weekend, whether you're taxed or not. All right, up against the wall, or was that a credit limit? Same thing, same problem.